Hi everybody and welcome to our fourth video. Today we're talking about harnessing the power of teams, and our key questions for today. We are starting with a little reminder of the 5 dysfunctions of a team as per Lencioni. Some of you may have seen that video from the develop stage, but just a little recap of some of that. Then we've got a little view from outside education, and finally a look within education. So just as a reminder then, if you haven't already seen Patrick Lencioni's The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, strongly recommended book, and I know that it's the founding book for a lot of the work at Dixon's. And so here are those 5 dysfunctions then. I think we can all agree that an absence of trust, a fear of conflict, a lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. Those 5 things, if you don't have those in your team, then you're not going to be successful, and it's quite useful to have those as a measure. I know that at Reach recently I've done a little survey among staff and how they feel within those 5 areas, and certainly there's some work to do and there's some areas of success. So perhaps that's one way that you could start to measure the success or the areas for development of your teams. Lencioni also talks about organizational health, and he talks about smart organizations knowing exactly what they're doing with strategy, marketing, finance, and technology. But healthy organizations are those ones that have minimal politics, minimal confusion, high morale, high productivity, and low turnover. So some good benchmarks for success there. I wanted to also give another view from outside of education, and again, it's from someone from the States. But this is a fantastic podcast, the Knowledge Project podcast that James has got me into. And this is Alan Mulally, who's the CEO of Ford. And he talks about, in his whole hour-long session, talks about loads of really interesting things and strongly recommend it. But he talks about this idea of profitable growth for all. So thinking about, obviously this is in a market scenario, but in a school context, how can we make sure that everybody is growing and developing? And what I really love, this is just one of the slides that he has as part of the show notes for this podcast, is that first thing, that first bullet point is people first. Love the people that you're working with, treat them well, and everything else kind of follows on from that. So strongly recommend that if you want to hear a little bit more from Alan Mulally there. And final one for today is creating thriving school teams from Mr. Chrome, who you can find on Twitter as Mr. Chrome, or you can have a look at his really impressive blog, pocketwisdom.blog. He's actually bringing a book out soon, The Power of Teams, but he's got at least 9 so far blog entries, all on creating really great teams within the school context. And so I just want to leave you today with these 3 questions for you to maybe take to your next team meeting and to evaluate where you're up to. So the first question is, how can we ensure that we do more teamwork and less task work? We're definitely guilty of getting into those meetings at the end of the day, just pulling up our to-do list and banging through it really quickly without that relational input. That's not going to motivate people. That's not going to make you feel like you are a team that really want to work together. So that's the first thing. Put some time aside to reflect on the core purpose and values of each team that you work in. Sam makes this really good point that it's really rare in other industries for one person to be part of multiple teams, whereas in a school, you might be part of your subject team, you're part of your head of year team, you may have another responsibility. So there's loads of different teams that you are part of, and that can make it challenging to feel like there's a number one team. So thinking about how are we harnessing that potential of teamwork. And finally, how have the teams been organised? If you are someone who has responsibility for putting together the year team groups, for example, how do you decide who goes where? How intentional is that? How deliberate is that? Let's maybe give that a little bit more thought between now and the end of this academic year. We've got time to think about what next year is going to look like. I'd love your thoughts and comments below. Our reflect question today is, how do you intentionally build strong teams? Thanks, everyone.